Okay, I'm not quite sure where the last video cut off. I know it was on this page, so I'm going to start on that second paragraph. The shrub soon stopped growing and began to get ready to produce a flower. The little prince, who was present at the first appearance of a huge bud, felt once that some sort of miraculous apparition must emerge from it. But the flower was not satisfied to complete the preparations for her beauty in the shelter of her green chamber. She chose her colors with the greatest care. She dressed herself slowly. She adjusted her petals one by one. She did not wish to go into the world all rumpled, like the field of poppies. It was only in the full radiance of her beauty that she wished to appear. Oh yes, she was a coquettish creature, and her mysterious adornment lasted for days and days. Then, one morning, exactly at sunrise, she suddenly showed herself. Oh man, having a great time. Uh, And after working with this painstaking precision, she yawned and said, "Ah, I am scarcely awake. I beg that you will excuse me. My petals are all still disarranged." But the little prince could not restrain his admiration. "Oh, how beautiful you are!" "Am I not?" the flower responded, sweetly. "And I was born at the same moment as the sun." The little prince could guess easily enough that she was not any too modest, but how moving and exciting she was. "I think it is time for breakfast," she added an instant later. "If you would have the kindness to think of my needs." The little prince, completely abashed, went to look for a sprinkling can of fresh water. So he tended to the flower. So too she began very quickly to torment him from her vanity, which was, if the truth be known, a little difficult to deal with. One day, for instance, she was speaking of her four thorns. She said to the little prince, "Let the tigers come with their claws." "There are no tigers on my planet," the little prince objected. "And, anyway, tigers do not eat weeds." "I am not a weed," the flower replied sweetly. Oh, I guess I should have done a sweet voice. "Please excuse me. I am not at all afraid of tigers," she went on, "but I have a horror of drafts. I suppose you wouldn't have a screen for me." "A horror of drafts. That is bad luck for a plant," remarked the little prince, and added to himself, "This flower is a very complex creature. At night I want you to put me under a glass globe. It is very cold where you live. In the place I come from." Oh man, you're probably going to be able to hear me sniffling through all this. I'm sorry. But she interrupted herself at that point. She had come to form. She had come in the. Oh, she had come in the form of a seed. She could not have known anything of any other words. Uh, embarrassed over having let Embarrassed over having let herself caught on the verge of such naive untruth, she coughed 2 or 3 times in order to put the little prince in the wrong. "The screen? I was just going to look for it when you spoke to me." Then she forced her cough a little more so that he should suffer from the remorse just the same. So the little prince, in spite of the goodwill that was inseparable from his love, had soon come to doubt her. He had taken seriously words which with it. Okay, nice little update there on the screen that I'm going to crop out. He had taken seriously words which were without importance, and it made him very unhappy. "I ought not to have listened to her," he confided to me one day. "One never ought to listen to the flowers. One should simply look at them and breathe their fragrance. Mine perfumed all my planet, but I did not know how to take pleasure in all her grace. The tale of claws, which disturbed me so much, should only have filled my heart with tenderness and pity." And he continued his confidence. "The fact that I did not know how to understand anything. I ought to have enjoyed my deeds and not by. I'm going to try this again. The fact is that I do not know how to understand anything. I ought to have judged my deeds and not by words." She cast her fragrance and her radiance over me. I ought I ought never have to run away from her. I ought to have guessed all the affection that lay behind her poor little stratagems. Flowers are so inconsistent, but I was too young to know how to love her. Chapter 9. I believe that for his escape he took advantage of the migration of a flock of wild birds. On the morning of his departure, he put his planet in perfect order. He carefully cleaned out his active volcanoes. He possessed two active volcanoes, and they were very convenient for heating his breakfast in the morning. He also had one volcano that was extinct, but as he said, one never knows, so he cleaned out the extinct volcano too. If they were all cleaned out, volcanoes burn slowly, steadily, without any eruptions. Volcanic eruptions are like fires in a chimney. On our Earth, we are obviously much too small to clean out our volcanoes. That is why they bring no end of trouble upon us. The little prince also pulled up, with a certain sense of dejection, the last little shoots of the baobabs. He believed that he could never want to return, but on the last morning all these familiar tasks seemed very precious to him. And when he watered the flower for the last time and prepared to place her under the shelter of her glass globe, he realized that he was very close to tears. "Goodbye," he said to the flower, but she made no answer. "Goodbye," he said again. The flower coughed, but it was not because she had a cold. I have been silly," she said to him at last. "I ask your forgiveness. Try to be happy." He was surprised by this absence of reproaches. He stood there all bewildered. The glass globe held arrested in midair. He did not understand this quiet sweetness. "Of course I love you," the flower said to him. "It is my fault that you have not known it all the while. That is of importance, but you have been just as foolish as I. Try to be happy. Let the glass globe be. I do not want it any more." "But the wind?" "My cold is not so bad as all that. The cool night air will do me good. I am a flower." "But the animals?" "Well, I must endure the presence of 2 or 3 caterpillars if I wish to become acquainted with the butterflies. It seems that they are all very beautiful. And if not butterflies and the caterpillars, who will call upon me? You will be far away. As for the large animals, I am not at all afraid of any of them. I have my claws." And naively she showed her 4 thorns. Then she added, "Don't linger like this. You have decided to go away. Now go." For she did not want him to see her crying. She was such a proud flower. Chapter 10. He found himself in the neighborhood of asteroids 325, 326, 327, 328, 329, and 330. He began, therefore, by visiting them in order to add to his knowledge. The first one was inhabited by a king, clad in royal purple and ermine, I think that says. He was seated upon a throne which was at the same time both simple and majestic. "Ah, here is a subject," exclaimed the king when he saw the little prince coming. And the little prince asked himself, "How could he recognize me when he has never seen me before?" He did not know how the world is simplified for kings. To them all men are subjects. "Approach, so that I may see you better," said the king, who felt consumingly? Yeah, consumingly consumingly proud of being at last a king over somebody. The little prince looked everywhere to find a place to sit down, but the entire planet was crammed and obstructed by the king's magnificent ermine robe. So he remained standing upright, and since he was tired, he yawned. "It is contrary to etiquette to yawn in the presence of a king," the monarch said to him. "I forbid you to do so." This guy is a load of barnacles. "I can't help it. I can't stop myself," replied the little prince, thoroughly embarrassed. "I have come on a long journey, and I've had no sleep. Oh man, I'm bad at this." Then," the king said, "I order you to yawn. It is years since I have seen anyone yawning. Yawns, to me, are objects of curiosity. Come now, yawn again. It is an order." "That frightens me. I cannot any more," murmured the little prince, now completely abashed. "Hum, hum," replied the king. "Then I order you sometimes to yawn, sometimes to—" He sputtered a little and seemed vexed. For what the king fundamentally insisted upon was that his authority should be respected. He tolerated no disobedience. He was an absolute monarch, but because he was a very good man, he made his orders reasonable. "If I ordered a general," he would say, by way of example, "if I ordered a general to change himself into a seabird, And if the general did not obey me, that would not be the fault of the general. It would be my fault. May I sit down? Came now a timid inquiry from the little prince. I order you to do so, the king answered him, and majestically gathered in a fold of his ermine mantle. But the little prince was wondering. The planet was tiny. Over what could this king really rule? Sire, he said to him, I beg that you will excuse me asking you a question. I order you to ask me a question. This guy's giving King Neptune vibes. Sire, over what do you rule? Order over everything, said the king with magnificent simplicity. Over everything? The king made a gesture which took in his planet, the other planets, all the stars. Over all that, asked the little prince. Over all that, the king answered. For his rule was not only absolute, it was universal. And the stars obey you? Certainly they do, the king said. They obey instantly. I do not permit insubordination. Such power was a thing for the little prince to marvel at. If he had been a master of such complete authority, he would have been able to watch the sunset not 44 times in one day, but 72, or even 100, or even 200 times without ever having to move his chair. And because he felt a bit sad as he remembered his little planet, which he had forsaken, he plucked up his courage to ask the king a favor. I should like to see a sunset. Do you do me that kindness? Order the sun to set. If I ordered a general to fly from one flower to another like a butterfly, or to write a tragic drama, or to change himself into a bird, and the general did not carry out the order that he had received, which one of us would be in the wrong? The king demanded. The general or myself? You, said the little prince firmly. Exactly. One must require from each one the duty which each can perform. The king went on. Accepted authority rests first of all on reason. If you ordered your people to go and throw themselves into the sea, they would rise up in revolution. I have the right to require obedience because my orders are reasonable. Then my sunset, the little prince reminded him, for he never forgot the question once he asked it. You shall have your sunset, I shall command it, but according to my science of government, I shall wait until conditions are favorable. When will that be? Inquired the little prince. Hum, replied the little king. Sorry, not the little king. I'm picturing him as pretty little, though. Replied the king, and therefore saying anything else be consulted, or sorry, and before saying anything else, he consulted a bulky almanac. Hum. Not the little chicken anymore, or whatever that guy says. Not a little duck. That will be about what that will be this evening about 20 minutes to 8, and you will see how well I am obeyed. The little prince yawned. He was regretting his lost sunset. He was beginning to be a little bored. I have nothing more to do here, he said to the king. I shall set out on my way again. Do not go, said the king, who was very proud of having a subject. Do not go. I will make you a minister. A minister of what? Minister of justice. There's nobody here to judge. We do not know that, said the king to him. I have not yet made a complete tour of my kingdom. I am very old. There is no room here for a carriage, and it tires me to walk. Oh, but I have looked already, said the little prince, turning around to give one more glance to the other side of the planet. On that side, as on this, there was nobody at all. Then you shall judge yourself, the king answered. That is the most difficult thing of all. It is much more difficult to judge yourself than to judge others. If you succeed in judging yourself rightly, then you are indeed a man of true wisdom. Yes, said the little prince, but I can judge myself anywhere. I do not need to live on this planet. Said the king. I have good reason to believe that somewhere on my planet there is an old rat. I hear him at night. You can judge this old rat. From time to time you will condemn him to death. Thus his life will depend on your justice, but you will pardon him on each occasion, for he must be treated thriftily. Yes, he is the only one we have. I, replied the little prince, do not like to condemn anyone to death, and now I think I will go on my way. No, said the king. But the little prince, having now completed his preparations for departure, had no wish to grieve the old monarch. If your majesty wishes to be promptly obeyed, he said, he should be able to give me a reasonable order. He should, for example, to order me to be gone by the end of 1 minute. It seems to me that conditions are favorable. As the king made no answer, the little prince hesitated a moment. Then, with a sigh, he took his leave. I make you my ambassador, the king called out hastily. He had a magnificent air of authority. The grown-ups are very strange, the little prince said to himself as he continued on his journey. Alright, chapter 11. The second planet was inhabited by a conceited man. I'm about to receive a visitor from an admirer, he exclaimed from afar, when he first saw the little prince coming. For, to conceited men, all other men are admirers. Good morning, said the little prince. That is a queer hat you are wearing. It is a hat for salutes, the conceited man replied. It is to raise in salute when people acclaim me. Unfortunately, nobody at all ever passes this way. Yes, said the little prince, who did not understand what the conceited man was talking about. Clap your hands, one against the other, the conceited man now directed him. The little prince clapped his hand. The conceited man raised his hat in a modest salute. This is more entertaining than the visit to the king, the little prince said to himself, and he began again to clap his hands, one against the other. The conceited man raised his hat in salute. After 5 minutes of this exercise, the little prince grew tired of the game's monotony. And what should one do to make the hat come down, he asked. But the conceited man did not hear him. Conceited people never hear anything but praise. Do you really admire me very much? He demanded of the little prince. What does that mean? Admire. To admire means that you regard me as the handsomest, the best dressed, the richest, and the most intelligent man on this planet. But you're the only man on this planet? Do me this kindness. Admire me just the same. I admire you, said the little prince, shrugging his shoulders slightly. But what is there in that to interest you so much? And the little prince went away. The grown-ups are certainly very odd, he said to himself as he continued on his journey. 12. The next planet was inhabited by a tippler. This was a very short visit, but it plunged the little prince into deep objection. What are you doing there? He said to the tippler, whom he found settled in the silence before a collection of empty bottles and also a collection of full bottles. I'm drinking, replied the tippler with loopy. I shouldn't be laughing. Why are you drinking? Demands the little prince. So that I may forget, replied the tippler. Forget what? Inquired the little prince, who already was very sorry for him. Forget that I am ashamed, the tippler confessed, hanging his head. Ashamed of what? Oh my gosh, this would drive me nuts, insisted the little prince, who wanted to help him. Ashamed of drinking, the tippler brought his speech to an end and shut himself up in an impregnable silence. And the little prince went away, puzzled. The grown-ups are certainly very, very odd, he said to himself as he continued his journey. Well, that was a sad little pit stop. 13. The fourth planet belonged to a businessman, that the man was so occupied that he did not even raise his head at the little prince's arrival. Good morning, the little prince said to him. Your cigarette has gone out. 3 and 2 make 5. 5 and 7 make 12. 12 and 3 make 15. Good morning. 15 and 7 make 22. 22 and 6 make 28. I haven't time to light it again. 26 and 5 make 31. Whew. That then makes 501,622,731. 500 million what? Asked the little prince. You still here? 501 million? I can't stop. I have so much to do. I am concerned with matters of consequence. I don't amuse myself with balderdash. 2 and 5 make 7. 500 million what? Repeated the little prince, who never in his life had ever let go of a question he had asked. The businessman raised his hand. During the 54 years that I have inhabited this planet, I have been disturbed only 3 times. The first time was 22 years ago when some giddy goose fell from goodness knows where. He made the most frightful noise that resounded all over the place, and I made 4 mistakes in my addition. The second time, 11 years ago, I was disturbed by an attack of rheumatism. Oh dear. I don't get enough exercise. I have no time for loafing. The third time, well, this is it. I was saying then 501 millions. Millions of what? The businessman suddenly realized that there was no hope being left in peace until he answered this question. Millions of those little objects, he said, which one sometimes sees in the sky. Flies? Oh no, little glittering object. Bees? Oh no, little golden objects that set lazy men to idle dreaming. As for me, I am concerned with matters of consequence. There is no time for idle dreaming in my life. Ah, you mean the stars? Yes, that's it, the stars. And what do you do with 500 million stars? 501,622,731. I'm concerned with matters of consequence. I am accurate. And what do you have to do with the stars? What do I do with them? Yes, nothing. I own them. You own the stars? Yes. But I have already seen the king who kings do not own, they reign over. It is a very different matter. And what good does it do you to own the stars? It does me the good of making me rich. And what good does it do you to be rich? It makes it possible for me to buy more stars. If any if any are discovered, this man, the little prince said to himself, reasons a little like my poor tippler. Nevertheless, he had some more questions. How is it possible for one to own the stars? To whom do they belong? The businessman retorted peevishly. I don't know. Nobody. Then they belong to me, because I was the first person to think of it. Is that all necessary? Certainly. When you find a diamond that belongs to nobody, it's yours. When you discover an island that belongs to nobody, it is yours. When you get an idea before anyone else, you take out a patent on it. It is yours. So with me, I own the stars, because nobody else before me ever thought of owning them. Yeah, that is true, said the little prince. And what do you do with them? I administer them, replied the businessman. I count them and recount them. It is difficult, but I am a man who's naturally interested in matters of consequence. Little Prince still wasn't satisfied. If I owned a silk scarf, he said, I could put it around my neck and take it away with me. If I owned a flower, I could just pick up that flower and take it away with me. But you cannot pluck the stars from heaven. No, but I can put them in the bank. What does that mean? That means that I write the number of stars on a little paper, and then I put this paper in a drawer and lock it with a key. And that is all? That is enough, said the businessman. It is entertaining, thought the little prince. It is rather poetic, but it is of no great consequence. On matters of consequence, the little prince had the idea which were very different from those from grown-ups. I myself own a flower, he continued his conversation with the businessman, which I water every day. I own 3 volcanoes, and I clean out every week, for I also clean out the one that is extinct, but one never truly knows. If it is it is of some use to my volcanoes, and it is of some use to my flower that I own them. But you are of no use to the stars. The businessman opened his mouth, but he found nothing to say in answer, and the little prince went away. The grown-ups are certainly altogether extraordinary, he said simply, talking to himself as he continued on his journey. Chapter 14. The 5th planet was very strange. It was the smallest of all. There was just room on it for a street lamp and a lamplighter. The little prince was not able to reach any explanation for the use of the street lamp and a lamplighter somewhere in the heavens on a planet which had no people and not one house. But he said to himself, nevertheless, it may well be that this man is absurd, but he is not so absurd as the king, the conceited man, the businessman, and the tippler. For at least his work has some meaning. When he lights his street lamp, it is as if he brought one more star to life, or one flower. When he puts out his lamp, he sends the flower, or the star, to sleep. It is a beautiful occupation, and since it is beautiful, it is truly useful. When he arrived on the planet, he respectfully saluted the lamplighter. Good morning. Why have you just put out your lamp? Those are the orders, replied the lamplighter. Good morning. What are the orders? The orders are that I put out my lamp. Good evening. And he lighted his lamp again. But why have you just lighted again? Those are the orders, replied the lamplighter. I do not understand, said the little prince. There is nothing to understand, said the lamplighter. Orders are orders. Good morning. And he put out his lamp. Then he mopped his forehead with his handkerchief decorated with red squares. I follow a terrible profession. In the old days it was reasonable. I put the lamp out in the morning, and in the evening I light it again. I had the rest of the day for relaxation and the rest of the night for sleep. The orders have been changed since that time? The orders have not been changed, said the lamplighter. Recordings have a 30-minute limit in the free plans. I mean, I'm coming up on 30 minutes. I cannot tell. Yeah, we'll find out. Okay. So the orders haven't changed. We've established that. Then what? Asked the little prince. Then the planet now makes a complete turn every minute, and I no longer have a single second for repose. Once every minute, I have to light the lamp and put it out. That is very funny. A day lasts only 1 minute here where you live? Feels like that should be a question. It's not funny at all, said the lamplighter. While we have been talking together, a month has gone by. A month? Yes, a month. 30 minutes. 30 days. Good evening. And he lighted his lamp again, and the little prince watched him. He felt that he had loved his lamplighter, that he loved this lamplighter who was so faithful to his orders. He remembered that the sunsets which he himself had gone to seek in other days, merely by pulling his chair, and he wanted to help his friend. You know, he said, I can tell you a way you can rest when you want to. I always want to rest, said the lamplighter, for it is possible for a man to be faithful and lazy at the same time. The little prince went on over his explanation. Your planet is so small that 3 strides will take you all the way around it. To be to to be always in the sunshine, you need to only walk along rather slowly. When you want to rest, you will walk all the day, or you will walk, and the day will last as long as you like. That doesn't do me much good, said the lamplighter. The one thing I love in life is to sleep. Then you're unlucky, said the little prince. I am unlucky, said the lamplighter. Good morning. And he put out his lamp. That man, said the little prince to himself as he continued farther on his journey, that man would be scorned by all others, by the king, by the conceited man, by the tippler, by the businessman. Nevertheless, he is the only one of them all who does not seem to me to be ridiculous. Perhaps that is because he is thinking of himself, or thinking of something else besides himself. He breathed a sigh of regret, and said to himself again, that man is the only one of them all whom I could have made my friend, but his planet is indeed too small. There is no room on it for 2 people. What the little prince did not dare confess was that he was sorry most of all to leave this planet, because it was blessed every day with 1,440 sunsets. Chapter 15, and I'm going to stop the recording here and restart in a bit.